Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum class. I am Bisma Abdul Sattar and today my topic of presentation is theories of magnetism. Key concepts of the lecture are symmetry and group theory, point groups, multiplication tables, group representation, development of character tables, introduction to the interpretation of spectra and structure elucidation. First of all, I will discuss theories of magnetism. If a magnetic piece of steel rod is cut into smaller pieces, each piece is a magnet having north pole or a south pole. Therefore, a magnet can be said to be made up of lots of tiny magnets, all lined up with their north poles pointing in the same direction. At the ends, the free poles of the tiny magnets repel each other and fan out so the poles of the magnet are round the ends. In an unmagnetized bar, the tiny magnets point in all directions, the north pole of one neutralized by south pole of another. Their magnetic effects cancel out and there are no free poles near the ends. Induced magnetism. When a piece of unmagnetized magnetic material touches or is brought near to the pole of a permanent magnet, it becomes a magnet itself. The magnetism is induced. A north pole induces a north pole in the far end. Example of induced magnetism is shown in the figure. When two steel nails brought near the magnetic bar, the magnetism is induced in these steel nails. First of all, I will discuss Weber's theory of magnetism. The fact that north and south poles appear on either end of a piece on breaking a magnet and also various other phenomena associated with magnetization of iron led William Weber to suggest that each molecule of a magnetic substance is a tiny magnet with opposite polarities at its two ends. A popular theory of magnetism considers the molecular alignment of the material. This is known as Weber's theory. This theory assumes that all magnetic substances are composed of tiny molecular magnets. Any unmagnetized material has the magnetic forces of its molecular magnets neutralized by adjacent molecular magnets, thereby eliminating any magnetic effect. In other words, under ordinary conditions in an unmagnetized state, a substance has number of such tiny magnets grouped together in a haphazard way, such that these magnets form a closed chain so that the various north and south poles neutralize one another and thus produce no external magnetic field. A magnetized material will have most of its molecular magnets lined up so that the north pole of each molecule points in one direction and the south pole faces the opposite direction. A material with its molecules thus aligned will then have one effective north pole and one effective south pole. On applying a magnetizing force, these closed chains are broken up, the small magnets to align themselves in such a manner that these axes become parallel and their north poles are point to one direction and south poles to the opposite direction. In the following figure, domains are lined up in the series. An illustration of Weber's theory is shown in the following figure where a steel bar is magnetized by stroking. When a steel bar is stroked several times in the same direction by a magnet, the magnetic force from the north pole of the magnet causes the molecules to align themselves. Now I will discuss second theory, that is domain theory of magnetism. The domain theory states that inside a magnet there are small regions in which the magnetic direction of all the atoms are aligned in the same directions. Then these regions are known as domains. Weiss proposed the concept of magnetic domains. Within a domain, the alignment of the magnetic direction is the same. In the next domain, it may be is a completely different direction. On average, over the many domains in the magnet there is no preferential direction for the magnetic force. However, using an external magnetic field from another magnet, the direction of the magnetic direction in each domain can be made to align with the magnetic field. The net magnetic field can be increased. For example, iron will become magnetized in the direction of any applied magnetic field. Now we will discuss why do magnetic domains form. Consider a bar magnet which has been magnetized such that the entire magnet forms a single magnetic domain. Surface charges will appear at either end of the crystal. Associated with the surface charges is a secondary magnetic field called the demagnetizing field, which acts to reduce the magnetic field. The energy of the surface charges is called the magnostatic energy. The magnostatic energy can be reduced if the crystal forms a second domain, magnetized in the opposite direction. In this way, the separation of positive and negative surface charges are reduced, decreasing the spatial extent of the demagnetizing field. In this figure, single domain and multi-domain are shown. Naturally, one might ask if the magnostatic energy is reduced by the formation of domains, can they carry a forming indefinitely? To which the answer is no. The reason being the energy is required to produce and maintain the region of transition from one domain to another, the domain wall. Equilibrium will be reached when the magnostatic energy is equal to the energy required to maintain the domain walls. However, domains are much larger than the individual molecules within the magnet. There are only 4 ferromagnetic elements at room temperature. First one is iron, second nickel, third cobalt, and fourth is gadolinium. The pictures below show the formation made visible with the use of magnetic colloidal suspensions, which concentrate along the domain boundaries. The domain boundaries can be imaged by polarized light and also with the use of electron diffraction. Observation of domain boundary movement under the influence of applied magnetic fields has aided in the development of theoretical treatments. It has been demonstrated that the formation of domains minimizes the magnetic contribution to the free energy. If a magnetic field is applied to the crystal, the domains that align with the magnetic field will grow at the expense of the domains that were pointing in other directions. Next is domain wall. The introduction of a domain raises the overall energy of the system. Therefore, the division into domains only continues while the reduction in magnetostatic energy greater than the energy required to form the domain wall. The energy associated a domain wall is proportional to its area. The schematic representation of the domain wall shown in the following figure illustrates that the dipole moments of the atoms within wall are not pointing in the easy direction of magnetization and hence are in a higher energy state. In addition, the atomic dipoles within the wall are not at 180 degree to each other, and so the exchange energy is also raised within the wall. In this figure, schematic representation of a 180-degree domain wall is shown. Therefore, the domain wall energy is an intrinsic property of a material depending on the degree of magnetocrystalline anisotropy and the strength of the exchange interaction between neighboring atoms. The thickness of the wall will also vary in the relation to these parameters, as a strong magnetocrystalline anisotropy will favor a narrow wall, whereas a strong exchange interaction will favor a wider wall. A minimum energy can therefore be achieved with a specific number of domains within a specimen. This number of domains will depend on the size and shape of the sample and the intrinsic magnetic properties of the material. Now we will discuss atomic theory of magnetism. We are familiar with the model of the atom with a nucleus that contains the protons and neutrons, and electron orbit the nucleus. Within the atom, the electrons behave as if they are magnets. Electrons, protons, and neutrons all have a magnetic dipole moment. However, the magnetic moment of an electron is the most significant. In fact, it is conveniently assigned a unit called the Bohr magneton, which is equal to the magnetic dipole moment of an electron. In addition to the magnetic dipole moment of the electrons, the fact that the electrons orbit around the nucleus that give rise to a second magnetic field produced by moving charge around the nucleus. In this figure, the picture of an electron orbiting the nucleus with the electron spinning on its own axis is shown. A more modern theory of magnetism is based on the electron spin principle. From the study of atomic structure, it is known that all matter is composed of vast quantities of atoms, each atom containing one or more orbital electrons. The electrons are considered to orbit in various shells and subshells depending upon their distance from the nucleus. The structure of the atom has previously been compared to the solar system, where the electrons orbiting the nucleus correspond to the planets orbiting the sun. Along with its orbital motion about the sun, each planet also revolves on its axis. It is believed that the electron always revolves on its axis as it orbits the nucleus of an atom. It has been experimentally proven that an electron has a magnetic field about it along with an electric field. The effectiveness of the magnetic field of an atom is determined by the number of electrons spinning in each direction. If an atom has equal numbers of electrons spinning in opposite direction, the magnetic fields surrounding the electrons cancel one another and the atom is unmagnetized. However, if more electrons spin in one direction than another, the atom is magnetized. An atom with an atomic number of 26, such as iron, has 26 protons and 26 revolving electrons. If 13 electrons are spinning in a clockwise direction, 13 electrons are spinning in a counterclockwise direction. The opposing magnetic fields will be neutralized. When more than 13 electrons spin in either direction, the atom is magnetized. An example of a magnetized atom of iron is shown in the following figure. Now we will discuss summary of the lecture. Two theories of magnetism. First one is Weber's theory of magnetism that assumes that all magnetic material is made up of magnetic molecules which, if lined up in north to south pole order, will be a magnet. If not lined up, the magnetic fields about the molecules will neutralize each other and no magnetic field will be noted. Second theory is the atomic theory of magnetism. This theory states that if the electrons of the atom in a material spin more in one direction than in the other, the material will become magnetized. At last of the lecture, I will discuss principles of the magnetism. The classical theory of magnetism was well developed before quantum mechanics. Lenz's law in 1834 states that when a substance is placed within a magnetic field, that is H, the field within the substance, that is B, differs from H by the induced field 4 pi I, which is proportional to the intensity of magnetization. The mathematical expression is given below. In this expression, B is the magnetic field within the substance, while the H is applied magnetic field and I is the intensity of magnetization. All of that was about the theories of magnetism. Now my presentation is over. Any queries can be asked in the comments. Thanks for listening.